Okay, welcome. So we're going to be talking about IP addressing, and this is specific to IPv version 4. This is not IPv version 6. So I want to first talk about classful IP addressing. Classful IP addressing is different from classless IP addressing. We'll go over that in a separate video. So when we talk about classes, we have three types that we really need to know about. There are actually 5 types, but we're going to talk about 3 of them. Class A, Class B, Class C. There's also Class D and E, and those are used for experimental purposes. They're reserved for scientific stuff. So we care about A, B, and C. Class A is for very large networks. Class B is for medium-sized networks, and Class C is for small networks, like what we use at home. So A is going to be for some large government organization. B might be for a university or a medium-sized company. C is our home use private networks. Anytime you see an IP address with the first octet being any number between 1 and 127, that means it's a Class A network, a Class A IP address. So let me show you what I mean by that. First octet might be 126, followed by the second octet, 123, followed by the third octet, could be 8. Fourth octet is 23. These are called octets because if you actually look at the binary side of things, you're dealing with something like ones and zeros. This is not the correct binary conversion for these, but it would look something like this: 11110000 dot 10101010 dot 11111111 dot 01010101. So you can see there are 8 numbers in here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You can see there are 8 numbers in here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Same goes for this octet. Same goes for this octet. That is why they're called octets. Okay, so with that in mind, for a Class A, if we see any number in that first octet ranging between the number 1 and 127, that means it's Class A, large network. And then next up is the subnet mask. Now I'll explain all 3 subnet masks when we get to the end of A, B, and C. I first want to make sure this all makes sense. So now let's move on to Class B. If you see that first octet, maybe it says 145.7.8.9, that first octet, that's between 128 and 191. That's a Class B IP address. You know it because it's between those 2 numbers. And then finally, this is the one we're all used to, 192.168. I'll add something here, 43.2. So first octet is 192. It falls between 192 and 223. If this were 212 instead, same thing. It would still be a Class C, and that's for those little networks. So IP addresses, if I can quickly show you, IP addresses are unique numbers that are assigned to a device, and that device is on a network. So if you can picture this, let's say you used to live at the home address 1234 Main Street, Anytown, USA. And let's say you go ahead and you put that home up for sale and you move to a new location. Maybe you move to 555 Main Street, Othertown, USA. That 1234 or that 555 is just like an IP address, just like a home address. So that's what's assigned to the device. And you could have multiple devices. Anytime I join a network, my DHCP, which we'll talk about here in a second, my DHCP is passing out that information to my device. Now, you can also tell if you're on a class A, B, or C network when you see subnet masks that follow this pattern. Class A is always going to be 255.0.0.0. That first octet is filled with a 255, and then after that, each octet is not filled with that number. It's basically, it's not blank, but it's a 0. So this basically is creating the network, and then devices are assigned IP addresses for the rest of this subnet. It's not going to make sense when I say that right now, but that's the point. 255.255.0.0. So again, the first octet is 255. Add a second octet, 255. That means it's class B. If we add one more octet, 255, that's going to be class C. So you can see it just goes down the line. 255 to 2255s to 3225s. Now let's talk about subnet masks, and not just about the class ABC. A subnet mask is a piece of a larger network, hence the name subnetwork. So, I listed above the subnets for class A, B, or C. Those first octets will tell you if it's a class A, B, or C, just like we saw up here. We know if it's a class A, B, or C, but then the subnet also tells us if it's a A, B, or C. So classless IP addressing, which we'll go over in a different video, that is totally different from classful. It takes a subnetwork and makes it even more subby. Basically, here's the concept. If I have a medium-sized company and I need 10,000 IP addresses, but I don't need 16,000, that means I'm wasting 6,000 IP addresses. So that's why we have classless IP addressing. It takes that subnetwork and then basically chunks it up into even smaller subnetworks. And I can give back those IP addresses. Okay, default gateway. This is the doorway. You could call it any one of these things. It's the doorway or the portal or the entrance and exit into and out of a network. So if I go over to someone's house, I have to enter through the default gateway. I have to open the door into their house. Pretend that's the only door that they have. They don't have a back door. They don't have sliding glass doors. They don't even have windows. If I think of it that way, that is the only entrance into or out of their house. That's what a default gateway is. So if I ever go to somebody's network, if I ever visit their network, there's something called a DHCP. It's a dynamic host configuration protocol. So it's either a server that you have set up to manage that, or it's part of your ISP service, your internet service provider service that you pay for. So if I go over to someone's house, let's say I've got a phone here, I've got my phone, and I've got like a laptop. If I take those two devices over to their network, as soon as I enter their network, the DHCP service is going to give me an IP address, a subnet mask, and a default gateway. I need all three to get on the internet. IP address, subnet mask, default gateway. So if you could picture back in the day when Oprah Winfrey did her gift giveaway, she had one episode she's known for where she gave away cars. And she was just, everybody look under your seats, and people grabbed car keys, and she said, you get a car, you get a car, you get a car, everybody gets a car. That's one way of thinking about it. Or if that doesn't resonate, you could imagine Halloween. And let's say you go out, you ring the doorbell, you say trick or treat, and automatically you get a piece of candy. So the treat giver is the DHCP server. That's the person who opens the door and gives you the candy. The treat receiver is the computer or device. That's you who's got your bag open. So that's DHCP. DNS, Domain Name Service. This translates IP addresses into words for humans. We don't deal in numbers. We don't, readily deal in IP addresses. So I make websites. I make website names that are easy to follow. GoDaddy, ESPN, CBS, NBC, all of these major networks have websites, including all the websites that are out there for people to utilize. So it takes that human readable word, the DNS service, it takes that human readable word and it translates it into an IP address, and that's what functions over a network. So if you could picture this, let's pretend you didn't have time to watch the Super Bowl this year. It's the next day, and you want to see all the details and stats, including how poorly the New England Patriots did in terms of their rushing yards, which I think was something like 79 yards. Anyway, not the point. Let's say you go to your computer, you sit down and you type espn.com. And when you type that and hit return, your DNS service is translating that from human readable text into an IP address. And it knows that that IP address is the server location for ESPN web pages. It knows it because it's just set up internally. All right, so that address gets sent through the network and it ends up at the ESPN server. And once it gets there, that information is gathered and then it's returned back to the reader. And the IP address that it came from, that numerical IP address that can be read by computers, is now converted back to human readable text, and it's converted back by your DNS. So you might see text like espn.com/Super Bowl 2026. And at that point, you've gotten the information you need because your DNS server worked. Now you might have an issue with your DNS when you can't get to a website despite having a connection. So you can do other things on the network, but you just can't get to a website or websites. Okay, so that's a quick crash course on all of these items. And again, this is for classful IP addressing, this first part. IP addresses, subnet mask, default gateway continue to work this way for classless as well. Like these definitions don't change, but this top part pertains to classful, class A, B, and C IP addressing. Couple questions here, and you can answer this in your head. First question, knowing about the classful IP addressing, which, if you have an IP address of 172.1.14.7, what class IP address is this? Remember, you're focusing on the first octet. Is this going to be A, B, or C? And you'll know that answer if you look back at this table. 172 is the first number, so I look here at class A. Whoops, sorry about that. I look here at class A, and remember it's 172. Is 172 greater than 1? Yes, it is. Is it less than 127? No, it is not. 172 cannot be a class A. So I go to class B. Is 172 larger than 128? Yes, it is. Is it less than 191? Yes, it is. Therefore, this is most likely a class B. I'm going to look one more time here. I look at 192. Is it greater than 192? No, it is not. So if the answer is no, that means I go back to the B option. 172 falls between 128 and 191. Therefore, the answer to this question is class B. Now let's do that same thing here for number 2. You have an IP address of 1.7.5.252. Go back to my chart, which I will have memorized for the exam. Is 1 equal to or greater than 1? The answer is yes. Is 1 less than 127? Yes. Is 1 greater than 128 or equal to? It is not. So it is probably a class A. In fact, that is the answer. I will go down here and type that. Last one, if you have an IP address of 222.79.44.6, what class IP address is this? So 222 is our first octet. Now I've done this a couple times. I know 222 is greater than 127, so I don't need to ask myself all the questions. I know that 222 is greater than 191, so I don't need to worry about 128. I know 222 is less than 223. So this down here is a Class C IP address. Okay, this crash course on IP addressing will move us into some other content. I'll create a second video for that. Let me know if you have any questions. Thanks for watching.